Hello and welcome back to the channel where I provide daily cricket content on interesting topics. Today's video is a continuation of my greatest all-time 11s for the major test-playing nations, this time picking Australia's team. This video is going to be tough for a couple of reasons. Firstly, as a proud Englishman, it is going to be a struggle to acknowledge quite how good Australia's pedigree is. Secondly, due to the depth of the cricketing greatness to come from those shores, you could almost pick an infinite number of combinations of a starting 11. Also of note is that, as with the English team's video, I have drawn a line in the sand in that players must have been playing in the 1960s or after. There are a few reasons for this, one being that going much further back you are giving the original test-playing nations too big of an advantage. In addition, there is very little available footage to review, and globally cricket was being played on uncovered pitches. If I could be clear, however, in that it was not a conscious decision to rule out a certain Don Bradman. England's team was arguably made weaker by this decision, and so will Australia's. The reality is, however, that Australia likely didn't need Bradman. On that slightly ominous note, let's get on with picking the Australian side. Here goes. 1. David Warner. Warner has been one of the most explosive opening batsmen in cricket history, but once you see the rest of the batting, you could argue he is the weakest link here. He has scored 8,158 runs in 103 test matches, including 25 centuries and 34 half-centuries, at an average of 45.6. In addition to being a fine player, he scores his runs quickly at a strike rate of over 70 in tests. 2. Matthew Hayden. Hayden was a dominant opening batsman for Australia in the early 2000s. He scored 8,625 runs in 103 test matches, including 30 centuries and 29 half-centuries, at an average of 50.73. His highest test score of 380 against Zimbabwe in 2003 was the highest individual score by an Australian batsman until Brian Lara broke the record a year later. Like Warner, he scores his runs quickly and regularly would get Australia off to a flying start. 3. Ricky Ponting. Ponting was one of the greatest batsmen and captains in Australian cricket history. He scored 13,378 runs in 168 test matches, including 41 centuries and 62 half-centuries, at an average of 51.85. Known for being particularly strong off his back foot, he scored runs all over the world during his storied career. 4. Greg Chappell. The only Chappell to make the team, Greg was a stylish and technically sound batsman who played for his country in the 1970s and 1980s. He scored 7,110 runs in 87 test matches, including 24 centuries and 31 half-centuries, at an average of 53.86. Chappell was a tremendous player of pace bowling and is regarded as one of the greatest batsmen ever to play for Australia. 5. Steve Smith. Smith has emerged as one of the greatest batsmen of the modern era, despite having an unorthodox technique and a slightly ungainly style. Whilst some may criticize how he looks when batting, no one can argue with his sheer ability to score runs. To date, he has scored just under 9,000 runs at a scarcely believable average of 59.8, scoring 30 hundreds in the process. There is no way around it. Steve Smith has to find his way into the team. 6. Steve Waugh, captain. Waugh was a gritty middle-order batsman and a great leader for Australia. When he was at the crease, Australia were never out of the game. He scored 10,927 runs in 168 test matches, including 32 centuries and 50 half-centuries, at an average of 51.06. He also captained Australia to 41 test victories, which is the most by any Australian captain. He was an excellent tactician and motivator and will therefore be the captain of my side. 7. Adam Gilchrist. It quite simply had to be, didn't it? Gilchrist was a revolutionary wicketkeeper batsman who changed the way the game was played. Even as an Englishman, there was a certain buzz when he came out to bat. Gilchrist scored 5,570 runs in 96 test matches, including 17 centuries and 26 half-centuries, at an average of 47.60 with a strike rate of over 80. He also holds the record for the most dismissals by an Australian wicketkeeper in Test cricket. 8. Shane Warne. Warne is widely regarded as one of the greatest bowlers in cricket history and brought back the art of leg spin bowling to the masses. He took 708 wickets in 145 test matches at an average of 25.41, including 37 5-wicket hauls and 10 wickets in a match on 10 occasions. Shane was a fascinating bowler to watch, with him slowly chipping away at batsmen both with his skills and his verbal warfare. It was a terrible shame to lose him last year, but he will globally be remembered as one of the masters of this game we love. 9. Dennis Lillee. Lillee was a fearsome fast bowler who played for Australia in the 1970s and 1980s. He took 355 wickets in 70 Test matches at an average of 23.92, including 23 5-wicket hauls and 7 10-wicket hauls. Lillee's partnership with Jeff Thomson is still considered one of the most lethal fast bowling combinations in cricket history. Whilst Thomson used brute force to take his wickets, Lillee was more skilled and earns himself a place in my team. 10. Pat Cummins. One of the stars and captain of the current Australian team, Pat Cummins has already proved himself to be one of Australia's best bowlers of all time. He has to date taken 217 wickets at an average of 21.5 with 8 5-wicket hauls. Cummins is known to be able to generate movement in the air and off of the wicket whilst bowling at a good pace. 11. Glenn McGrath. McGrath was a master of line and length and one of the most successful fast bowlers in cricket history. He took 563 wickets in 124 Test matches at an average of 21.64, including 29 5-wicket hauls and 3 10-wicket hauls. McGrath's consistency and accuracy made him a nightmare for batsmen to face, and as an Englishman growing up in the 90s it was impossible to ignore his greatness, so he was a certain pick for this team. Quite frankly, I don't know if any collection of players from history could beat that team. Even just some of the names to miss out, such as Alan Border, Justin Langer, Michael Clarke, Mike Hussey, Mitchell Johnson, Marnus Labuschagne, Richie Benaud and Josh Hazlewood would make the backbone of an amazing side. It is therefore hard to make an argument that any of the teams compiled so far would be able to compete with this Australian 11, possibly the West Indies at a stretch. I would be really interested in knowing your thoughts and if you would have swapped any players out of this team. You almost can't go wrong out of this bunch. As ever, thank you all for watching. I will be back tomorrow with Pakistan's team.